Hello, everybody. This is Mark Smith with Family Tree Counseling Associates and Life Coaches. What we have here tonight is the married sisters are in the house.
Thank you.
When was it that we did that show before?
It was actually the last weekend of January.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
These ladies do things like in a really super classy way. And they rented a hotel and had a fancy cameraman and speakers and food afterwards. But the main thing is we got into a lot of good issues.
Yes.
About recovery and spirituality and family of origin.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell you what, I told my significant other it's probably the most powerful thing I had ever been involved with. It was really good. And I guess
It was very good.
Why don't you introduce yourself and LaToya and tell a little bit about yourselves. I'm going to adjust the camera just a little bit.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Becca Wilson. I'm the host of Mary's Sister Show. And I have with me on today one of my co-hostesses, LaToya Williams. And we together host a show, like I said, called Mary's Sisters. And we started this last year. It was last year, wasn't it? We came together last year. We're wanting to deal with topics and issues that women are facing today, whether they're married, single, widow, or divorced. It's our goal to just begin to have real talk, talk about those issues, talk about those hard topics that women are facing, whether in a marriage, single. And so that's been our endeavor and our vision. And January, like we said, we had Mark on. He came on, and it was a very powerful show talking about the sins of the father and just revealed a lot of things, took us through a journey. He came through and just wrecked us, basically. And so
came through and wrecked you.
Yeah, we were wrecked.
I was wrecked afterwards. I was exhausted.
We definitely needed recovery afterwards.
I did too. We had church, I'm telling you what. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. So we're here today just to talk about piggybacking off of the Mary Sisters Talk show that we've done, dealing with the sins of the father. And you can tune in to that series that we've done with Mark Smith Tuesday, April the 6th, 12 noon on our Mary Sisters Talk show page on Facebook. Also, you can tune in on our YouTube channel. So we'll love to have you to come over and view that. I believe Mark will be able to have it too on his link. So we ask you to definitely view our show. And if you like it, share, tell someone about us. Anything else?
So, we're just starting, and people will be joining as we go. So We got a hi Mark, hi everybody. So y'all didn't tell me about wearing white. I don't think I even have anything white.
I did white, but our colors is the fuchsia and pink because our colors are
right. I definitely don't have any pink. That's for sure.
Yeah. So, but our colors represent also writing relationships. When you look at the color fuchsia, we don't do these colors because they're girly girl colors. It's actually a significant meaning to them, and it's writing relationships is what fuchsia really means. And so that is our color. The pink is like the joy, and so that's our branding colors. So.
Okay, so basically what we did last time was I just went over some family system stuff and some patterns in genograms that I see and patterns in family systems. And then if something resonates with you, just go, ooh, 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 or somehow flag me down.
Sure.
And I'll throw you the ball and you can run with it. There's 16 topics that I wanted to cover, and I'll just share some things, and then you just work off of that. Now we got some folks on. Annie's here. There's no audio issues. Well, that's good.
Okay.
That's good. There's no audio issues. We're ready to go. Okay, so the first one of the 16. By the way, I'm gonna throw in 3 really good poems as well as part of the 16. Honey, you mind being the question watcher? I just called your husband honey. One of the things that I see as a reoccurring pattern, it's not a common reoccurring pattern. It's a parent who breaks promises, doesn't tell the truth, isn't trustworthy. In the Bible, there's several places where one of the elders can put their hand on the head of a kid and they can give them a blessing or a curse.
Yeah.
And if a parent tells the truth and keeps promises and is trustworthy, they're sort of given a blessing. But if they don't keep promises, what will happen is people are wounded, and they grow up, and what do? They reenact the same thing that happened in their family of origin. And they pick people who are irresponsible, break promise, drop the ball, screw up, have an addiction. There's a lot of different ways you can say it. Some are worse sounding than others. So that's one of the ones that I see. And it's heartbreaking sometimes because these adults at one point were children who had their parents on a pedestal. And it's like they believe their parents have what's best in, their best interest, but actually the parent is selfish and manipulative, sort of has a darker side.
It does.
And then the person who already has had many broken promises, they'll pick a best friend who stabs them in the back. They'll pick a first girlfriend who'll cheat on them.
Right.
They'll pick a first wife who has an alcohol problem. And, it's just one heartbreak after another. So that's one that I see happening from time to time. But the main thing is I help them connect the present with the past. I tell them, you don't have a marriage problem, you got a childhood problem.
Yes.
And once we do that, then the animosity that is going on between the person who feels victimized and the person, who's been dropping the ball, the environment improves. And then they can be therapy buddies instead of one person feeling victimized. So any thoughts, reactions to, I'm sure you've seen that in community.
Yeah, I mean, you experience that because, of course, we all come from parents. And so, and a lot of times we put I don't want to say a lot of times, most of the times we put our parents in a God spot. And so
We do as kids.
Right, as kids, so we learn everything from our parents. So, we learn how to tell the truth, how to hold the truth, how to internalize things. We just act those things out. And I know that, me personally, I had those issues, like I shared on some of the things I shared with our video that we done, is that, I did have daddy issues. And so I didn't view men from a place of healing. I've done it out of a wounded child. So my first marriage was more out of being a wounded child. And so that's one of the things that's so important, that adults are dealing with childhood wounds. And that's just bottom line. We are dealing with those issues. And if we don't take the time to be self-aware, even before we start relationships, just that self-awareness of ourselves, to begin to just deal with some of those triggers that's triggering us in any type of relationship that we may have across the board. So whether it's with our spouse, or like you said, with a best friend, I think those are very important issues that we must need to begin to look on the inside of ourselves, that self-awareness of just who we are.
Right.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. Fortunately, I feel like I've kind of worked through a few of those issues, but I do have a friend. I was just talking with another friend about a girlfriend that we share, and she was sexually assaulted by her step-parent, who was the only father that she knew as a child. And she was in a marriage for 18 years to a man that abused her, attempted to kill her, and all kinds of crazy things. And so she ended up getting a divorce and leaving that man. However, a few years later, she got back in a relationship and was in the same situation. Different guy, same guy. Different guy, same guy.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, as we've mentioned, we are viewed as parents as that God figure to our child. We are the first representation of that covering and that protection. So she's fully aware now that I need help. I need some counseling to deal with the root that is causing this issue. She's fully aware now that it's me that's drawing this energy to me. In a repeated process. Even when I think I'm free, I'm still in the situation. So
not until that's dealt with, because we attract who we are, right? So we attract that. And it's like you're saying, it's a different person, but the same situation. And that was my story. I had a history of just dealing with the same situations until I was just able to break free. I took a long period to go on that self journey and start to heal, that process of healing. Why am I acting out this way? Why do I attract the people that I attract? But it wasn't until self-awareness, did the work, try to seek the help that I need, whether it was through, church, or just try to seek the help, the mental health that I needed to make myself better. And so, because other than that, you will attract, at the point where you are, you're going to attract that same type of person. So.
And you'll be that same type of parent for your children, unfortunately. And that's where it's really detrimental, because the cycle's continuing.
Yeah.
They're not seeing that curse, that generational curse, that bondage being broken. And they, in essence, are repeating those same cycles that you were in.
We were doing a family tree today, and I do a life coaching training. And we went all the way back to great grandpa. And he committed suicide. And grandpa was a rager. Dad was a rager. So you had 3 generations of hard, men. And now we got the next generation who's in really steep recovery. And he's not a hard man. He's a strong man, but he's not a hard man. And he is gentle and wise, and one of our therapists. And it's beautiful to see how doing work on yourself can break that generational curse that you're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
It's hard.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people tend to think that, well, if I just want the help, it's going to happen. It's going to happen because I desire it. No, you've got to get down and dirty and do the work. And some days the work doesn't look pretty and you don't feel like the work is working, but it's that continual process, that continual engagement that.
Yeah. So let's, we'll have a little fun here. We said we weren't going to ask your husband a question, but now I'm going to mess with him. One of the things that I do as an assessment tool is every couple that comes in, I have this very interesting question. I said, there's only 100% of power to go around. When push comes to shove, has to be things you both really care about. If it's something you delegated to him, you don't care about, that don't count. Which hill are you going to die on is what I'm asking. You know, so just for fun's sake. He looked like he'd ready to take me out back and whoop me. There's 100% of power to go around. Why don't we have you start? Of the 100% of power, how much you think he's got, how much you got?
I feel like it depends on the topic.
I know. Throw it all into one basket and don't tell me 50-50.
Okay, don't tell you 50-50.
I ain't never seen that.
Gosh, 60-40?
Which way?
Oh, gosh. He's very accommodating to me. So I would have to say 60-40 my way.
All right.
Yeah, he's very accommodating.
Did you say Michael went at what?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Michael, what would you put it at?
It's 60-40. She hit it.
Yeah.
If she doesn't hold, it works well when she holds the 60.
Yeah. If it gets flipped over the other way, there might be a thundercloud.
Yeah, there's something's not gonna go right.
Yeah. I get you. So it's sort of a fun question to ask. What I normally do, couple's been in there for 20 minutes, and I write at the top my percentages, and then I ask them the question, and I'm within 5%, like 95% of the time. I've been doing this 34 years, so and if I'm really far off, usually they're full of crap, right? We find out later that it was a different percentage than what we were talking about before. Okay, these are in no particular order, so I'm just okay. Here's an issue, and it's probably 2/3 of the people that come to any therapist, and that is middle-aged couples who've drifted apart. They got on a car trip to California. They ran out of gas about Nebraska. You know, they out of gas, and they come in and they're good parents. They're good business partners. They like each other. They're friends. They just very much fire going on. You know, much fireworks going on. And so what I do is again, like I do with I redirect them to their childhood. If they're brought up by stoic parents who don't show love, don't show affection, not much hugs, not much I love yous, not much compliments. Let's say the woman grew up with that and the husband's wanting that. And I explained to him, if that's what you wanted, you done went and married the wrong woman because she ain't got none of that. You know, and he really didn't marry the wrong woman. He really grew up also lacking in getting enough of those needs met. Now, I'm not saying y'all are in midlife or anything like that. I'm in 2/3 through life. I ain't even mid, and that's if I lived at 90. So I don't know where that puts me. But that's where people sometimes go to a traditional marriage counselor, and the object is to put a little spice in the marriage, which doesn't usually work. Again, they don't have a distance in the marriage problem. They had a distance in their childhood problem. And most of them, they don't know how to fight.
Mm-hmm.
They either fight too terrible or they don't fight at all because they're afraid.
Mm-hmm.
And the key to having a good, robust love life is to be able to talk,
yes,
be able to
got
fight,
to have the communication.
be able to resolve the
Yes.
conflict.
Yes.
And then you feel close.
Mm-hmm.
I was working with a fellow the other day. He was mad. His wife wasn't very interested in sex.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, that's just the way women are made. If they don't feel loved,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not just burning candles
Right.
and playing music,
Right.
brother.
Right.
It's
That's
still
right.
more complicated
Yes.
than that. You got to talk.
Yes.
Right.
You
Yes,
got
it's
to
definitely about the
You got
communication.
to apologize.
Right.
You got to talk about what's going on inside you, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And if they basically have to rewire some of their personality.
Mm-hmm.
And I say the good news is if you do this, if you do the work, there'll be more
Mm-hmm.
of
Yeah.
that connection you're looking
Mhm.
for.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
any thoughts about
Right.
that? I'm not just a
I was just gonna say it. You know, you do have to have that communication. You can't come with your preconceived notions because it's not a one size fits all.
Mm-hmm.
So there has to be communication with your spouse because it's nothing like that. You just don't have no connection. You don't have a connection. You're just sitting there silent,
Mm-hmm.
nothing to talk about,
Right.
and it's like you never take that step to have those intimate conversations.
Isn't
So
it sad
it's
when you see that couple at a restaurant
it
So
is.
and they have nothing to talk about?
Nothing to talk about because it's like, okay, should we talk about your childhood? Should we, let's, have a conversation. Let's talk about something. But that disconnect is just, it's weird, especially when you're that one that, that likes to talk, like to put your feelings out there and try to find that connection. And they're kind of just sitting back like, well, I guess I'll just be on my phone. I had nothing to talk about. We're at a restaurant. And it's like, and you see that.
Mm-hmm.
You do see that when you take the time to look at people at the restaurant and just see, are they over there talking and connecting and laughing? Or is that couple just, we'll have the chicken and this. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I think my husband, Michael, and I will be married for 18 years in May. So next month will be 18 years
Awesome.
that we will be married. And we are kind of in that stage where we've got a teenager that's driving around and kind of on his way out. He has 2 years before he'll be off to college. And we have an 11-year-old daughter that's busy with sports and her friends and her things that she likes to do. So we have a lot more us time. It's a lot more, it's a lot more us together as opposed to doing things with the kids. And he will probably admit that I'm always the one that says, oh, what are you thinking? I want to know what you think. I want to know what you feel. I want to know every single thing that's in your mind. And he's like, there's nothing there. There's nothing left.
I gave it all.
He corrected me. He gave it all. I mean, and certainly understanding, there's work, there's other things that we're working on. But I think that if you don't have that time where you are taking time to focus on that relationship, focus on that communication, it's very easy to feel. It's very easy to get in that trap and grow further distant away from each other. So we try to, we don't hit the mark every time, but we try to set aside that time to spend that time together and to talk. And I still might not get much of the, all those thoughts that are ruminating around in his head, but I know that he is making every effort to be that and do that for me. And so for me, that is the glue. Because he makes the effort, because he does attempt, even though we might not get to that long, intimate notebook, the movie Notebook. That's my favorite movie. I always throw it up to him. We might not ever get to that intimate notebook conversation, but I know that it is his heart's desire to provide that for me. So I think that's where if you don't have someone that's willing to meet you where you are, you're definitely going to run into issues and trouble. You have to be willing to work at that communication.
Yeah.
Our camera field is small. Can I get you guys scooched down just a little bit?
Sure.
I've been
Is that
fooling
better?
with it. I think I got. No, we got it. No, we got it.
Yeah. And that too is, important what you're saying, because you got to put in the work. I mean, because again, if you're not putting in the work where the communication is concerned, you are going to grow apart. And then you start looking for other avenues to just fulfill those, the lack in the marriage that you're in. So.
And people tend to think, I mean, I've had friends that have, marriages haven't lasted and haven't worked. And they think that because they're meeting someone else and there's chemistry, that's the sign that that new relationship is going to last. Chemistry
in love is easy.
Yeah. It's easy. Chemistry is very easy to gain with someone. You can have chemistry instantly, and have that excitement and that passion, but is it sustainable? 9 times out of 10 for most people, it's going to last for a specific duration of time. But am I willing to build a life with you? Those are two different things. And I think people misconstrue having that chemistry, that moment of passion with someone, and being able to build a life that's sustainable.
True.
Yeah.
There's a comment here from a lady named Celia. She says, "What beautiful ladies filled with spirit."
Oh, thank you.
Awful nice thing to say.
Yes.
So, like I say, this is a bit of a potpourri. I'm going to be bouncing around from different things, but I want to read a poem, and it's about feelings, and it's by Rumi, who lived in the 1500s. But it looks to me like he wrote this yesterday. And it's called The Guest House. He says, "This being human is a guest house. Every morning there's a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness. With me, it's a foggy brainness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each one has been sent as a guide from beyond." So that's what I try to get people to do, is pay attention to their feelings. And to not get rid of what they think is the bad. There are no bad feelings. To get them in touch with whatever's going on with them and have the courage to be able to feel it. And that's what a lot of times gives you direction in your life. There's a place in the Bible where it talks about that still small voice. A lot of that's just listening to your gut and paying attention to your feelings.
That's true.
I have this belief that if you're tuned into your gut, you're usually in the right place at the right time with the right people for the right reasons. But if you're disconnected from yourself, you can spend a lot of time in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong people for the wrong reasons. So pay attention to feelings. What do you got any thoughts about that?
Yeah, because our heart has a language and we need to learn it and listen to it. That's just, the poem is very powerful, because like I said, your heart has a language, and if you ignore it, you end up in those situations and those relationships that you really don't want to be in. It's kind of like what you grew up in, kind of like guides those relationships and not really looking into your heart. I was in a relationship where it wasn't about my heart. It was kind of more so, okay, you think we should be together? Okay. It was that logic. And it was that from based upon the wounds that I dealt with as a child. And I felt like, all right, well, you're an older guy. You're kind of like my daddy. And you tell me what to do. And okay, so yeah, you want to get married? Okay, that's fine. You don't want me to talk to my family? Okay, yeah, that's fine. So that's type of relationship that I had from 17 to 18 and got married at 18. And that person was just an abusive father figure, that took that role. And I didn't know, I had some things in my heart that I knew I didn't want to be in that relationship, even though I was listening to it, but I didn't know how to listen and to respond and to react on it. I just felt I put myself in a prison. And I thought this was the prison, this is my life. And then religion had a lot to do with it too, because I felt like growing up, religion said you can only marry like one time. You're going to be an adulteress the rest of your life if you get out of this thing. So religion played a lot in me being staying in a prison that I didn't have no desire to be in, but didn't know how to break free from. And so it is important to listen to your heart and to guide your heart. And also in getting the healing, that's one thing that I like with Psalms 51, when David, even though he fell with Bathsheba, but it's so important. It's like creating me a clean heart and renew that right spirit within me, and in the inward parts, I desire to be healed. And so that I can reflect what's on the inside better than what I was just thinking, okay, I'm just going to bury this stuff down in my heart. I'm not going to listen to it. And I'm just going to stay stuck in these situations. So your heart has a language. I really think, we got to learn to listen to the heart. We can rationalize it up here, but there's a disconnect at time from logic into what's really going on in our heart.
Yeah, so that's good. And when I was listening to the guest house, I thought about, all of our perspectives of the people that come in and out of our life, and what is the benefit that we're going to receive as a result of that transaction. The person came and they pillaged the house, but this is what was one of the stanzas in that poem. But there was some benefit that came out of it is what I got. And, I heard a funny thing about COVID this morning on the news, and this kind of relates to kind of the poem. And yes, all of us were completely devastated by COVID-19. We've lost.
I didn't want to invite COVID in that.
No, none of us wanted to invite COVID. Right. None of us.
It was here.
None of us wanted to invite COVID, and I've lost loved ones, friends, and family members to COVID, and there are still those that we mourn as a result of the disease being a reality in our world. However, because of the devastation, there was stillness in the planet. So the oceans were beginning to be rejuvenated. The air was being cleaned. There were things on a planetary level that were being restored as a result of destruction. Mm-hmm. So we never know what the perfect order for a disruption in our life could be. And that's what House Guest was speaking to me. Mm-hmm. And if we can change our perception around what's happening to us to understand it could be happening for us, we can live in joy despite being uncomfortable through the situation. And that's kind of one of the things that I've learned to kind of appropriate for my life. Doesn't really matter what's going on around me. Mm-hmm. As long as I know that the joy of the Lord is my strength, everything around me will work together for my good. And I don't have to be frustrated about it. I can remain in joy, even being uncomfortable, even when my house is being pillaged. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just what the poem brought to my mind.
Yeah. And that's a process to get there. Mm-hmm. Joy, that joy just don't show up. You have to seek it.
Yeah.
You have to seek it. You have to recognize that just something is missing here in this house and pursue it. Mm-hmm. And that is the beauty of being in Christ, is knowing that there is a joy that the world, like you hear them, that the world don't give to you, so the world can't take it away. No matter what's going on, I still have that joy on the inside of me, no matter what my circumstances or situations is. I'm not moved.
Yeah. Normally we have more questions of coming in. I actually have a rubber chicken named Fernando, and I squeeze him and he makes this horrible noise like a dying goat or something. And And I tell people if they don't send me enough questions, I'm gonna get Fernando out and torture them. We do have some questions, but Gilligan, Seeley, Annie, can you get more specific with your questions? I see them, but I don't even know how to answer them very clearly. So I won't get Fernando out. Oh, they actually like Fernando. Is when I get him out is maybe why they do it. But he's in the other room. So, just try to narrow down the question and make it a little bit where we can sink our teeth into a little bit. All three of those. So I appreciate that. Okay. Something I want to say about mentoring that I think it's a lost art in our culture. You know, it used to be when a young person was going to learn a trade, they'd have an uncle, a father, a family friend that would mentor them. Now we send them to college, and I think that when it comes to either people being a pastor or a counselor, the main most helpful thing is having an older person pour their life into a younger person. Yes. Timothy had Paul. Yeah. You know, I've got a fellow named Vernon now that I'm mentoring. It's probably the most fun thing I do at work is invest, and see the kid just sort of light up with growth and insight and hope and confidence. The other day he came in and he said, you know what? I know I'm going to be really good. I was like, wow.
Awesome.
You know, because it wasn't arrogance. Yeah. It was just gaining some swagger that you need to have if you're going to be out there in life. So have you experienced that either as a mentoree, a protege, or a mentor?
For me, I definitely have. My grandmother was really my biggest mentor. She invested in me tremendously. She gave every single thing she had and could give to pour into my life. And I know that if I didn't have her as really the foundation, I wouldn't be anywhere that I am today. But we also have, my husband and I, there's a young boy outside of our children that we spend time with. We started a financial literacy. I'm in finances, so when you talk investing, I'm all about that. So let's, we can take that all day. But we started a financial literacy program at a local high school, and
that's cool.
Had some take up, but teaching. This was an inner city in Indianapolis, and it was just really difficult to get that topic across when, their needs are more important than learning something for down the road. They're concerned with, am I going to eat tonight? But we did have one boy that when he was in 7th grade, he attached to us. And I knew from the moment I met him that this one was special, particular time to invest. And so I think you're right, Mark. It is the most rewarding relationship because naturally we do it for our children. But this boy was just somebody that has just stayed with us that,
I sort of become your children.
He's become our child. Yeah. And I think it's the thing that we have to do. I mean, commercially driven society that blocks us from being in that close proximity, in that close community with our brothers and sisters. But I really believe that in order to see the kingdom fully be manifested in the earth, it's going to take us being like Paul, pouring into the next generation and then looking up to find the one that's going to pour into us. So I think it's critical.
Yeah, definitely. And I think too, that's why Mary Sisters came about, is because it's pouring into the next generation, or it's just that real talk. It's sensitive to me because that's something that I never had growing up. And even though I was in church all my life, but there was no one that cared. You know, I was always being, something was always taken from me.
They didn't see your pain.
They didn't see my pain. And then even though I was I love to be around older people, but it was the older people that that I was abused by, because it's like, well, how you got a smile on your face. What are you doing to get that smile? You know, what's going on with you? I want to be like that. Or I didn't grow up and see a marriage that I wanted to have. I didn't even think on marriage when I was younger, but marriage was presented, and I jumped in it. You know, maybe this is freedom, a sense of freedom. Maybe I can
I've
go
never
and do
heard
some
marriage
things.
called freedom.
I know, but when you're in a traditional setting, almost like an occult setting where everything is governed what you do, that's kind of like a sense for me. It was like a freedom. But I just remember when I look back over my life, I didn't have anyone to pour in, to take that time to pour into your life, to invest, to see the beauty that's hidden down inside of a person, and want to help to cultivate that. And so that's something that I lacked growing up. And it's now something that I pursue wholeheartedly now. You know, if I see someone who's further along, or they're in that spot that I want to be in or achieve, because you can never stop learning. And so I look for that. I connected with a lady last week, and I talked. We went out to eat, and I just talked with her, and she was pouring into me, and it's like we were just having that casual conversation on some things, but it was like I called her back after a couple of days, and I'm like, oh, God, I just want to be your student, you know, because I just learned so much just out of that conversation. And so having a mentor and somebody that can just speak in your life that just loves you for who you are and wants to see you to do better, I think it's awesome. It's just so awesome to have.
So I got a question here that I can work with a little bit. It's from Jilligan. She says, for me, I'm nowhere near letting anybody in my life yet. I have severe anger, pain, and trust issues. I'm lost on how to handle it and wonder if you have any insights. Well, yeah, Jilligan, it's a good thing that you're not letting anybody in your life because you're not ready.
Yeah.
You have to deal with you said severe anger. Usually if there's severe anger in significant other relationships, it's because you feel victimized and you're too focused on what the knucklehead or the bad guy did or is doing, and not focused enough on the root of the problem, which is your wounds from your childhood. The trust issues come from learning how to protect yourself, from learning how to love yourself and create an environment that's safe, to learn how to have faith. And those are just a few insights that I have about that one. Here's one I'll throw out to you guys. Do you believe in writing down an agreement with a loved one around expectations?
That's a tough one. I mean, because I think we'd have to really get specific in regards to what types of expectations someone has. But typically, what I've learned in my, like I said, with my 18 years of marriage, what I've learned is I can tell my husband what I expect, but he can't see what I expect. I can tell him, I want you to do this, but there's a specific picture that I have in my mind that I might not be able to verbalize to him. So what I've learned how to do is really let go of my internal expectation. As long as he's doing what I ask him to do, I can't expect that he can meet the picture that I visualized in my mind. It's almost impossible because sometimes I can't meet my own expectations. I think you can have a conversation and talk about it, but I think it's really challenging when you have a mental picture of something you expect from someone.
Yeah. And that's so true because we put so many expectations on people at times. And if they don't meet those expectations, then we fall, we're let down.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll run from that relationship or whatever, because you didn't meet my needs or my expectations. So putting expectations, I guess, depending on what they are, but you have to be careful with that because it's a letdown. It's a major letdown. If you I expect you to act this way, I expect you to do this, or I expect when I feel this way, you to do this. The most important thing goes back to communication. Communicate your needs that you need in that relationship instead of expecting them to act the exact way that you think they're supposed to act, because that just don't work.
And you have to think about skill set too. You know, when I think about expectations with our children, you know, there are things that I expect them to do. I expect that room's got to be, their bedrooms have got to be clean. Their bathrooms got to be straightened up. The dishes are going to get done. But it's never done to my liking. You know, it always falls slightly short. I've got to come behind them. And so it's also about skill set. Does that person have the ability to meet the expectation that you're asking of them?
That's true. That's true.
Like I said, this is a bit of a smarter sport tonight. One thing I haven't brought up a while is a book called No More Mr. Nice Guy by an author named Robert Glover. And what it is, it's a book actually written for men around codependency. There's 100 books written for women on codependency. But this is the only one that I'm aware of that addresses men specifically around assertiveness, healthy sense of entitlement, having vision, having strength of character, having integrity, becoming a stronger man in relationships where, one person holds, say, just out of the blue, 20% more power than another person. I don't know anybody like that. Then that's pretty good. 60-40 is pretty good. It really is.
It is.
But there's a lot of men out there where it's 80-20, 90-10, and their wife wants them to man up and be more involved and be stronger, but they just don't have the capacity to do that. And then let's say this is the extra power that the wife has. She can't just hand it over. Okay, you be the man. He got to take it from her, and because she wants him to have leadership, but she doesn't want to feel out of control, and doesn't, wants him to slowly earn the trust, not just be bequeathed the trust. So that's a book I would recommend for men. No More Mr. Nice Guy by Robert Glover. Y'all have perfect marriages, so you don't know what I'm talking about here. So,
oh yeah.
From other people, do you have any thoughts about men manning up?
I'm learning not to be in that controlled. I guess I just got to trust my husband that he can lead, bottom line. Because it sometimes it is a power struggle, because I had to learn to be that independent woman and, get out here and provide for myself and do those things. And so even though I love my husband dearly, sometimes I'll be like, okay, you're not doing this quick enough. Okay, I need this done. But I have to back up and be like, hold up. I have a husband. Let me relinquish this and let him flourish in that, because sometimes he does tell me, well, you're doing everything. And sometimes I'm doing everything. But I have to trust him that he can man up and do what he's called to do.
Right.
So.
And I think that's a process. For me, I definitely came from a background where, my grandmother, again, really was my rock. And I was I had a lot of trauma, a whole lot of trauma coming into our marriage. And I was kind of like, I think of a lioness that, my husband, yes, he was a lion. He's an excellent provider, excellent father, and excellent man in every single possible way that I can think of. But I was like the person that had a question. I was full of anger, full of rage, not necessarily at him, but at everything that had happened to me. So I didn't know how to receive his love, accept his covering, accept everything that was going on around me without being in this state of rage, because that's what I grew up in. And I grew up fighting to keep my heart from being shattered and being in a crazy house. That's what I felt like I was fighting for. So I certainly can understand how men can be in that position, especially dealing with a woman that has come from that aspect of, I trust you, I love you, but I'm afraid. I don't want my heart to be broken. I want to love you. I want to give myself completely to you. But at the same time, I'm still shielding a portion of me that was so deeply wounded, that I've tried to, so hard to maintain the bit of recovery that I've gotten.
Yeah. Here's a little bit of a layup question. There's a famous Christian marriage counseling book called Love and Respect.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And it's based on the verse in Ephesians. And Seeley says, women need love, but men need respect. Do you find that to be true? Well, yes and no. Women need respect too.
Yeah.
Men need love too.
Yes.
But the thing about respect is, a lot of times I'll get a more passive husband in, and he'll say, well, my wife doesn't respect me, as if it's her problem. If she don't respect you, it's because probably some of that male codependency, maybe some ball dropping, maybe some messing up. Respect is commanded, respect is earned. And yeah, a man's ego is sort of built to want respect, but it's going to require some work on oneself to be stronger, be more assertive, be able to take that extra power out of her hand and say, I want to be the man in this relationship.
Right.
You've been the man for the last 10 years.
Right.
I want to be the man now.
Right.
So you guys are relate to what I'm talking about there.
Yeah. I definitely get it. And there's a verse over in Ephesians 5, I think, about where when Paul is addressing marriage, he is telling women to respect their husband or their own husband. And I think a lot of times we kind of have more of an issue in respecting them when they're codependent. And it's like,
it's impossible.
It's very hard because it's like, I'm doing your work and my work too. So I got to respect you. But as long as they're, coming around doing the work or wanting to learn, we got to scale back, but give them that respect.
This lady says, I'm so tired of being the man for sure in the relationship.
Yeah.
So that means I'm choosing poorly. No, Celia, actually, my belief is nobody chooses wrong. You always fall in love and marry the right person. What it means is you probably had to overfunction as a child. You're probably one of the older kids in the family. Dad was an alcoholic, mom was depressed, and oldest daughter in the family raising the kids.
That's it.
That woman's going to grow up and raise a man too.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. Because that's hard. But if, like I said, if they're doing the work and they see those issues, if he's a wounded man, get the work.
Every man I know is a wounded man.
Get the work and man it up.
Wow.
Every man I know is a wounded man. Not all of them are knuckleheads, but
Yeah. There's a lot of them who's willing to do the work.
That's all
Yeah.
you can ask.
Yeah.
That is.
So my favorite poet is a guy named David White. He's British and Irish, but lives in America. And he wrote a poem called Sweet Darkness.
Mm.
And it's a poem about struggle and vision.
Mm.
So take a listen. When your eyes are tired, the world is tired also.
Mm.
When your vision has gone, no part of the world can find you. It's time to go into the dark where the night has eyes to recognize its own. There you can be sure you are not beyond love. The dark will be your home. The night will give you a horizon further than you can see. You must learn one thing. When he wrote this poem, he said he had the hair standing up on his neck because he didn't know what the next stanza was.
Mm.
He says, you must learn one thing. And what came up is the world was made to be free in.
Mm.
The world was made to be free in.
Mm.
And when we work on our issues effectively
Mm.
and we get healthier,
Yeah.
we get free.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yes.
a lot of times our issues dominate us so much. The thought of being financially free, relationship healthy, thriving in your career, physically healthy. It's hard to get all that going on at the same time,
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm.
But I love that line that the world is made to be free in. Give up all the other worlds except the one to which you truly belong. Sometimes it takes darkness and the sweet confinement of your aloneness to learn that anything or anybody that does not bring you alive is too small for you.
Mm.
Mm.
Oh, that's good.
It is.
Mm.
That was one of the things we were talking about. One of the filmings that we had, that the love of her husband, it made you come alive.
Mhm.
And so that is very powerful. And where the Bible says, where there's no vision, the people perish. And regardless if you have a spouse or not, you should be fulfilling your goals, your dreams, and your desires, actively pursuing those. I feel like, because a spouse is an addition. They didn't come to take away; they come to add and bring life to you, even more life.
Okay, we're
Let's
going
say.
to differ about.
Mhm.
You know what the purpose of marriage is?
What's that?
Actually, the purpose of marriage bring brokenness to your life, because you're instinctively going to marry the right person. In the beginning, it seemed like you won the lottery.
Mhm.
You know,
It
seemed like you won the lottery at first, but 10 years later, you're like, some of these behaviors seem faintly familiar.
Mhm.
They seem a little bit like the stuff that I grew up with.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
in the Bible it says, "Iron sharpens iron as one man sharpens another."
Mhm.
That applies to husbands and wives sharpening each other.
Yeah.
You know, so that's what I try to teach people when they come in. When they're distant, when they're in conflict, it's all good.
Yeah.
It's all an opportunity to heal and grow.
Mhm.
And the number one thing that brings people to counseling, the number one thing that causes people to be desperate enough to really work on themselves, marital love,
Mhm.
romantic love,
Mhm.
gone afoul.
Mhm. Yeah.
Which it goes afoul birth at some point or another.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Them triggers we put, we're targeting each other's triggers at the beginning. So yeah, it is like a breaking. But the beauty of it is being able to grow, change, and evolve. You know, I feel like even on my a Christian journey that you shouldn't be that same person that you were last year. There should be some type of growth, some inner growth, inner healing constantly. And so, and marriage is a good way to expose those wounds because it's like, oh, you got all these triggers, and like you're saying, I'm mad, I'm angry, and I don't know why I'm feeling this way. But yeah, I feel like marriage does break you in a sense, but it causes you to grow and evolve more into one. To me,
I mean, and I think that the thing about it is because it's an intimate relationship, you can't hide. I can hide with everybody else. I can put on the great face that, I can do that with everyone else. But when you're in that close proximity, that close relationship, those triggers are inevitably going to come up at some point, unless you are an absolute master, at that deception, but I think for me, the beautiful part is in my darkest, when the darkest, most ugliest parts were coming out of me as a result of, again, just the trauma,
no ugly parts. That shit. No.
He
didn't see none of it.
He won't say that now. He won't say that now, but I can acknowledge the ugly. I can acknowledge it, and I'm so thankful. I've shared this. I tell it, all the time. I'm thankful that he never walked out on me. He never gave up. And, his love has brought me to this place of wholeness. And for me, it's a place where I don't have to be upset about what someone did to me. I don't have to be angry and just steaming over someone else's external behavior. I can process it in the right way, deal with what it is for that moment, move on, and still love that person. And that was something that I didn't have the ability to do prior. So I'm thankful for the darkness being exposed in me because it's making me better. I'm not where I want to be, but I know that to recover.
It's really about paying attention. The universe and your spouse in particular is going to be communicating, and do you have the ability to listen? If you don't have the ability to listen, the universe has a Mack truck with your name on it, and then you don't have an ability to listen after that, the universe has another Mack truck.
It's coming back around some form or another, but I think that's also love. That's also love, because without it, we're not evolving, we're not growing, we're not becoming better.
Right. You want to be with a spouse that you can be naked and not ashamed to expose yourself, to be vulnerable. And like when that stuff is coming out, you don't want them to pack up and leave. Oh, okay, I'm out. I'm done. Get the changes. But yeah, you definitely want to. That's the beauty of it, is to have someone there who's loving you through those dark times and sees you for who you are. The beauty in you. You were saying that diamond in you.
So, like I said, I'm bopping from subject to subject here tonight. I'll talk a little bit about the topic of shame. Brene Brown has made shame a more understood and more well-publicized term. She's from the University of Houston, and she's a shame researcher. But my favorite book on shame is by also a guy from Houston, named John Bradshaw, and he wrote a book called Healing the Shame That Binds You. So shame, there's several kinds of shame. One is guilt. Guilt is a good thing. Guilt is your conscience coming along and tapping you on the shoulder and saying, that wasn't cool. Don't do that. Go apologize. That's a good thing. But shame comes along and says, you're a really bad person. You're terrible. You're bad. I wrote an article once I played with Bradshaw's title, Healing the Shame That Binds You. And I wrote an article called Healing the Shame That Blinds You with couples.
Mm-hmm.
So the other kind of shame is, let's say your spouse critiques you this much.
Mm-hmm.
They have every right to critique you. They really should be your number one critiquer.
Mm-hmm.
They know you better than anybody. They sometimes know you better than you know yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for them to give you feedback's entirely appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
But if you got shame, you hear this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you might react like this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you're like, dude, I'm just trying to say this to you.
Mm-hmm.
Happens to be true.
Yep.
You know, but that's what'll blind people. And then there's a big fight that ensues because one person doesn't feel heard and then the other person doesn't feel heard. I have a couple that they when they met, they spoke different languages.
Mm.
She spoke Swedish, she spoke English,
Mm.
and now they've married and they both speak both languages. And they come to me and said, Mark, it's like we're speaking different languages on marriage. You know, they both know Swedish and English. It's not doing them a darn bit of good, you know. So that's what we do in therapy is I listen to one, listen to the other, listen to one, listen to the other, figure out she's speaking German, he's speaking French, and then I interpret and try to create a safe environment for them. And then they're like, oh, that's what you meant. Well, that wasn't as bad as I thought. You know, so that's a real common, it's a shame. I call it the common cold of people's issues. Everybody, if you grew up with a critical parent, a controlling parent, an abusive parent, being bullied in school, a critical religious or school system, you're liable to have some form of oversensitivity to criticism or you use a negative inner voice on yourself. So y'all know anything about shame?
Yeah, and I'm still silencing those voices in my head. So it's
hard,
a daily, because certain things kind of trigger to make me feel like I should be ashamed. But thanks be to God, my process, my journey of healing, that I don't have to be ashamed and I don't have to let people shame me and carry their opinions on what they think I should be ashamed of, the things that happen in my life. Bad marriages, bad relationships, things that I've gotten involved in, and things I don't have to feel ashamed, and I don't feel ashamed anymore over those things, over those mistakes that I made. So I definitely, I definitely get that being delivered from the shame that we bind ourselves. We put ourselves in a box, and it's just something, like I said, it's that process, and it's a daily process of affirmation for me, of having to just say who I am as a person and who I am even in Christ, to just begin to, like I said, to silence those voices that try to come up and try to remind me, well, remember this or remember that, or, are people going to think this about you? So it is a daily affirmation for me to, silence those voices.
Yeah. And just scripturally speaking, I mean, when we think about shame, and really the first mention is in Genesis, when Adam and Eve ate of the fruit of the tree and they were hiding, and they said we were ashamed, we were naked and we hid ourselves. They didn't, all hell didn't break loose because they ate the fruit, but it was their identification with shame that the Father said, okay, I've got to bring you out of the garden. Why? Because your internal process is going to be more destructive to you than the external behavior that you did. And so oftentimes what you mentioned is you're giving the criticism or the complaint, and it's this big, but in here, it's this gigantic Titanic, and I think when it's our level of worthiness. Am I worthy? And God says, you are my daughter, you are my son. I've made you worthy because you are covered in my blood. Yeah. So there is no act, no thing that you've done. Yes, there are consequences to our actions, but to carry shame, it's almost like the heaviest weight that you could possibly carry. So I'm thankful that that's not something at this time, just through my process of deliverance, that, I don't really walk around with. It was something that I did. I mentioned in a taping that we did that, my father was incarcerated for the first 34 years of my life. And so to carry that weight, to know that this is my lineage, this is what I come from, that's a shameful thing to have to admit. But I don't own that. I didn't do that, and I have nothing to be ashamed of, because there are some unique gifts that my father bestowed upon me just by DNA transfer. So I can honor him as my father and totally disregard those behaviors and that activity, because I don't own that. That doesn't belong to me. I inherited unique qualities that I wouldn't have gotten had he not been the man that brought me into this world. So
that's a good way to look at it.
I mean, I'm thankful that I'm free from that. But I have, I've got a sibling that does feel that weight. They do feel the weight of that, because they're the very likeness of the man that, that they look just exactly alike, so it's a kind of difficult. It's a little bit more difficult for him to kind of walk away. I believe that his healing is coming, but I'm thankful that I no longer carry that weight of shame.
I'll tell you a funny story. That's across the bear. My mom was the Center Township trustee in Kokomo, and they didn't pay her very much, and she was always one to rob Peter to pay Paul. Well, one day she robbed the coffers of the local government, and it was a minor infraction, and but she went to jail. But my mom had a lot of bad qualities, but shame wasn't one of them. I swear to God, goodness, she said, "I'm going to summer camp," and she held her head high and went to the local jail for 3 months, and made crafts and treated it like she was at summer camp.
Wow.
You have to know my mom.
I've had my run-in with the law, and people trying to make you feel ashamed of, well, you went to jail. Yes, I did. And I learned a very valuable lesson, and I've never been there since. I learned. So there's no shame now,
Yeah.
That's good if you learn and you don't have return engagement.
No.
So
reoccurrence.
I don't know if I mentioned. I think I might have mentioned this one, but I mention it again because I just run across it so often. And that is, I frequently work with people who, in the family, they have 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 kids, 14 kids. I heard of a family recently that I work with where there was 17 children.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Not today. It's generation back, 2 generations back. But it comes by one or two things. Usually it's German folks looking for farmhands. And they invariably have 16 girls and 1 boy. In that case, girls learn to farm. Or, it's Catholicism. And just the stories I could tell of just the older ones raise the middle ones.
Yeah.
The middle ones get ignored. Nobody raises the younger ones. They run the streets.
They just grew up.
It's just a really sad pattern where I mean, I grew up in the Catholic Church, and I have a lot of good memories actually of it. But my parents had 7 children. I don't believe my parents should have had a couple of goldfish, to be honest with you. They were not competent people. They had a lot of issues, but in order to be an acceptable daughter to my grandmother, my mother needed to pop out 7 children to be, like a good Catholic. And I'm not trying to put Catholicism down, but I know for a fact God in heaven didn't tell anybody to have 17 children, 13 children, 9 children. I believe that, it gets to where they outnumber you.
Outnumber
get to 3 or 4. Wow. You better stop before they take over. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but it's just sad to see the damage in the next generation. And then when I have a couple sitting on the couch, I don't see 2 people. I see 14.
Yeah.
It's like there's grandma and grandpa, and then there's their parents. And I almost see them in my head. And I certainly see them on the family tree that I'm putting together. But it's just child neglect is what it is, whether it's driven by religion, driven by farming. I don't know what it's driven by.
Yeah, I think, you can have those issues even with a smaller set of children, 1 or 2. It's one of those things like, my mom, she dealt with divorce, and the circumstances around her divorce was very, very painful for her. And so being left with 4 kids, there was not much pouring in. It was that dynamic. You had the glory child, the older daughter taking care of, looking at the younger ones while mom goes out to go to work. But she didn't know how to get her healing. She was wounded. And so it just kind of bled and trickled down on us. And so I was the last one. And I felt like, there was just no pouring into, and you can't pour into from an empty cup. So it was just empty. So I always felt like, I just kind of grew up seeing the mess. I felt like I was raised. I just kind of grew up observing and internalizing all the mess. So.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly don't have that many people in my family, but I agree that, even with just my 2 children, I don't know where we even have time for another one. I don't know how. I couldn't imagine. Yeah. I couldn't. And we've got a dog, and he takes up a lot of time too. And I couldn't add anything else. So there were 5 of us growing up. And like I said, my grandmother was the one that was there doing that investing, because not only, despite dysfunction, I mean, as a mom, moms are just tired. Moms are, it's a hard job. And
dad's busy going working.
And dad's working.
Providing for all those children.
Yeah.
If he's there.
Yeah.
So.
If he's there at all.
Yeah.
Right.
You brought up family roles, so I was going to touch on that. I've got 4 or 5 videos in dysfunctional families, and I think every family is a dysfunctional family. Some are way more dysfunctional than others. But usually there's a family hero, somebody who gets good grades, they don't break the rules, they're people pleasers. A lot of times they grow up and they look healthier than the rest of the family. They make more money. They have a nice house. They drive a nice car. They get to thinking that the family curse that's hit everybody else, that they dodged it with good education and, moral fortitude. And then things blow up eventually, The second one is the scapegoat. If I had to avoid a role, I think I'd avoid being the scapegoat, because what they do is usually they're the second oldest, and they realize I can't compete with, Mr. Perfect Pants over here. So I'm going to get attention by acting out.
Mm-hmm.
So they do drugs, they drop out of school, they don't go to college, and it takes a toll.
Yeah.
Their potential that they can achieve in their life gets really damaged. They might end up in jail, So scapegoat's a rough way to go. Probably the biggest role that I had growing up, we call a lost child. My favorite book is a book about family roles, and it shows a little girl sitting in a room all alone reading a book. Now she'd be sitting in a room all alone looking at her tablet.
Right. Right.
But
sometimes.
but a lost child they don't have a lot of friends. They have a few good friends. They don't have a lot of friends. They don't have a lot of passion in life. They don't have a lot of hobbies. They don't have a lot of joy. They're just trying to figure themselves out. And they could be 50 years old still trying to find themselves,
Wow.
And then the last one is the mascot. A lot of the world's great comedians are mascots. They're children of alcoholics. They learn how to assuage the family's anxiety by being funny and cute. So Robin Williams would be a good example. He was a mascot. It's people. It's the class clown, and a lot of times it's the youngest, and a lot of times it's a mama's boy, mama's girl, and where there's a lot of over closeness there.
Wow.
And the danger of being a mascot is they never grow up, and they never launch out of the home. But those are four family roles taken to extreme, and that's what we do in therapy and recovery. We help the family hero be human. We help the scapegoat not have shame and find a positive way to get their needs met. We help the lost child learn how to have passion, learn to do some things that, lights them up for a change, and gives them a sense of purpose. And I had this one guy, I used to do group therapy with him. I had a men's group, and I had probably 15 men in there on a given night. 10 or 12 would show up. And this guy was a mascot, but he was so funny, we wasn't getting any work done in group therapy. And I should have shut it down sooner, but he was really funny. It was better going to a comedy club, this guy. So I finally, after about 2 months, I had to sit him down and go, "You too funny." and then after that, he goes, "I'm a recovering mascot." And he would limit himself to about half a good joke a night. He could have tore us up all night long if he wanted to. But in your families growing up, do you identify with any of those four roles? Sometimes there's a combination of roles too.
That's what I was getting ready to ask.
Yeah.
Because what you was explaining, I'm like, is it possible to have a little bit of each of those qualities?
I wouldn't say to have all four growing up. Different times in life.
Yeah, like different times in
life. Like a family hero may grow up being the golden child and then go to hell in a handbasket in their 30s. Or a scapegoat may struggle and be a punk rocker all the way through 23 and then turn into Bill Gates, So there's transition. Or in childhood, like I was a combination, I was half family hero, half lost child. So there's definitely different. Very few people are just one their whole life.
The whole life, they transition. I believe that because I felt like when you was identifying the lonely child, or not the lonely child, the lone child, the lost child. Yeah. I was like, man, I saw a trend of that, a trend of the mascot.
I think I was more that kind of growing up, because that was the way I kind of dealt with some of the things I was dealing with, was just crack jokes, be funny, just,
Where'd you fit in age-wise with your siblings?
I'm the youngest.
It's usually the youngest is the mascot.
Yeah, I feel like be the clown, be the class clown at times. But then I saw myself transition to be a little bit more serious. But I think I kind of went between the mascot and the lost child. So
It's a common one. How about yourself?
I'm the oldest, so
Okay.
I'm definitely the hero. Yeah, definitely that in every situation. I was always trying to find the solution for everybody, and overachieve in every possible category that I possibly could, and portray that ideal picture, regardless of what was going on externally. So yeah, definitely identify with that.
yeah.
Mhm.
Definitely. But I do have a question in regards to just the family categories. Mark, would you say that for all of those personality types, that in order for them to become healthy, even if they're, avoiding interaction with their family members, that's even a possible option to wholeness? I mean, don't you have to identify with it, restore it to get to the healthy place, or what would you say?
You mean they have to understand the role that they're playing?
Mhm.
That's really any part of recovery. An alcoholic isn't going to get help until they know they have a problem.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that's why this is my favorite book. It was a book written about family roles, because I could see the roles. And even when you know what your role is, sometimes it's really hard to change it. I do a video series with a lady, life coach, who we call it a series about over-functioning. It's usually over-functioning women. And I've worked with over-functioning women from 28 years old to 68 years old. And they got one thing in common. They're all old in their spirit. And it's a different form of family hero. There's the family hero that's successful and everything they touch turns to gold. And then there's the family hero that overfunctions and everybody around them underfunctions. And it leads to a lot of exhaustion. But yeah, to answer your question, the guy couldn't quit cracking jokes in group therapy until he fully understood what a mascot was and how he was avoiding working on himself. The lost child sometimes need to take some risks and put themselves out there socially, when they'd be much happier staying at home, with a bag of popcorn, watching a movie, by themselves, So yeah, you got to see it before you can work on, really doing the healing work in it. So the folks have been chatting about the family roles. Jilligan asked, "Is the lady speaking right now a lost child?" I think she was talking about you. You said you had some lost child. I don't know how she saw that. Jilligan says, "My oldest sister is the golden child." That's another. Maybe the golden child is a form of a family hero, the one where everything they touch turns to gold. My middle sister has become a bully too. She's passed on now, though, some years back. I found that to be, it's really how I got into my own personal recovery, was reading that book. It's called Another Chance by Sharon Wade Schneider Cruz. And I was so committed to my faith, I didn't think there was any value in, secular psychology. And then I read this book on family roles, and I'm like, that's my family. How'd they know? How'd it fit so well? And then it opened me up to understanding. And really our approach is pretty simple. It says the sins of the fathers will be visited upon the children and upon the children's children to the third and fourth generation. Today, we were doing a family, we studied 5 generations in one guy's history. And that's one of the reasons why I always love the movie and the book Roots. Because you could see it play out, how one generation affects the next generation, affects the next generation. And it's really powerful stuff where you're able to name that kind of stuff. Let me throw in another poem here. This will be our last poem of the night. We got about 15 minutes. We just lost our light power there. I wonder if you stick that in that computer, if it'll turn back on, if there's an extra spot to put it in the computer. Got a little dark in here all of a sudden.
I was going to say something too. I grew up with my brother being the glory child because he played football. And so you had a lot of people that just wanted to see him be successful.
He was a big football star?
He was a big football star growing up. So it was hard. That was hard in our family because it's like he got all the attention and the mentoring and the help, that I kind of longed for, as a lost child. So that's important to, I guess what you do, just balance it. Balance it out. Everyone is important.
Each child needs specific attention, not, targeted specifically to them, not, it's got to be a unique, specialized care for each child. And I think if you have the 13 and the 12 and, again, like I said, I don't know how we'd manage more than 2 because we can kind of divide and conquer. But, I certainly can see how that's hard for any child, any child.
Yeah.
Recently, and then you got to press the button there if you can't. There's no place to plug it in. Okay. It's not too dark in here, is it?
No, it's fine.
It's not too bad.
All right. Cool. There's an East Coast poet named Mary Oliver who passed away recently, but she wrote this famous poem named Wild Geese. And it starts out really speaking about the antidote to shame. Okay, so it starts out, it may not sound very Christian in the beginning, but it's really about a reduction of shame. And she says, you don't have to be good. You don't have to be good. You don't have to walk on your knees 100 miles in the desert repenting over shame. Maybe if you've done something really wrong, you might want to consider walking around the block repenting, but you only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Learn how to have joy. Learn how to know who you are and what you love. Learn how to pay attention to your body. Learn how to pay attention to what lights you up, and find joy in nature, in whatever it is that makes you excited, in poetry. And What things that light me up are playing basketball and riding my motorcycle
Mm.
and watching cheesy 1980 movies with bad soundtracks.
She concurs.
Yeah. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me of your despair, yours, and I will tell you of mine. Meanwhile, the wild geese high in the clean blue air are heading home. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world is offering itself to your imagination. I got a pretty positive, big imagination sometimes. You can think really good things. The world is calling you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things. So, reduction of shame, increased joy, imagining good things, and finding your place in the world where you can thrive.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's some good stuff.
I mean, you said at the onset, it doesn't sound very Christian-y at the front, but I actually think it does, because what it makes me think of is where scripture says that he looks at your sins and they're as far as the east is to the west. Doesn't even remember them anymore. So there's nothing that we can do, in terms of our behavior. Yeah, again, there are consequences for the things that we do, but our Heavenly Father is looking at us as his perfect creation, telling us, as these geese are flying in the sky, come up here and play, enjoy life. I came that you might have life and that more abundantly. But if our mind is only focused on the low level things of being in shame, being in guilt, and feeling unworthy, we can't ever experience what the birds are experiencing as the wind is flowing through their wings.
Right. Yeah. And that's the beauty of it, of being in Christ, is that, he has forgiven us if we bring it to him and unload it on him. And that's the beauty of what I call, Psalms 91, the secret place, where you can just go in that secret place and begin to just reveal to your Heavenly Father, I'm dealing with this, I'm dealing with that, and allow him to create in you that clean heart, and allow him to create that you are at new creation in him. And so, and that's, and it's a daily process. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a daily process. It's always being mindful and self-aware, and aware of, the joy that you can have in Christ, and just that joy, and not allowing people in that space to even speak the shame or remind you of that shame, but just to know that you can be that new creation, new mindset.
So, one of the main things that I try to accomplish when a couple comes in, it's really the main thing. In 34 years, I've never had a couple where there hasn't been at least one person who feels like a victim. There's always somebody. They don't like the word sometimes. Well, I don't really feel like a victim. I'm like, yeah, you do. I heard you about 3 times say victim-y things. If you use the word unfair, you feel like a victim. If you use the word resentment, you're thinking like a victim. So my main goal is to identify which one of the two. And sometimes they're both really victim-y. And then I'm like, really got my hands full, But usually it's one. One comes in and says, I'm the victim. The other one comes in and says, I'm the bad guy. And so a minister friend, he once asked me, well, what's the key to marriage counseling? And I failed his test. He wanted me to just quote scripture. And there's nothing wrong with quoting scripture, but it's not the key to marriage counseling. The key to marriage counseling is you get one person coming in and they feel like it's not fair.
Mhm.
I signed up for this, but I got this. And so I know what the problem is. It's this knucklehead. I'm going to get rid of him and I'll get it. Somebody that really loves me.
Mhm.
She divorces him, loses half of her estate, sees her kids half the time.
Mm.
And then she finds out this guy's the same guy, like you were saying earlier, with the same name. And so Stephen Covey, he said, if you want to help somebody quickly help change their paradigm.
Mhm.
Yes.
Mhm.
And so what I try to do is get people to always eliminate victim mentality from their thinking.
Mhm.
Because if you married, you ain't never been victimized in your marriage. If you signed up for somebody, and there was evidence along the way who they were, if you signed up for them and you stayed 20 years, that's a self-inflicted wound is what that is. I'm telling you. I mean, they didn't put a gun to your head and make you stay.
Mhm.
So once people get that understanding, it's really God's plan to make you heal and grow, to give you an opportunity. He ain't going to make you do anything.
Right.
He'll give you an opportunity to heal and grow. I've often said, when I arrive in heaven, I'm going to demand a meeting immediately. Ain't going to press anybody. Probably take me 3 years to have the meeting. They'd keep me waiting. But I'll want the meeting, and then I'm going to say, okay, you're God and, all powerful. And so a woman sees her dad beat her mom, and the way you heal that, she grows up and picks a man, beats her.
Mm.
A guy grows up with a mom who, for whatever reason, criticizes him, doesn't like him, hates him. What is he? The cure? See, our woundedness is our picker.
Mhm.
Guy he come in. He said, "Mark, my picker's broken.
Mhm.
Every woman I ever went out with is mean and crazy."
Still your choice.
And I said, "Your picker ain't broke. If you were in baseball, you'd be in the Hall of Fame. You batting 1,000.
Mhm.
If there's a mean, crazy woman, you're gonna find her, and there's gonna be
Your
magic.
picker.
It's gonna be black magic. it's gonna be devilish magic. It's gonna be
right.
painful magic." But I'm just saying, that unfortunately is how it works, and it's bad news for most of us.
Yeah.
Because however we're wounded, we got one or two. We don't even have a choice. We have one or two things that can happen. If you're lucky, it's probably 5 to 7% of people pick what I call their anti-type. Like with me, my mom was so mean and so controlling. If I'd have gone out with somebody, if I'd have sniffed the slightest bit of mean and control, I'd have got up and left the date right then.
Mm.
They ain't gonna roll.
Yeah.
I picked the nicest, sweetest, kindest, most codependent, adoring, prettiest woman who'd have me. She wasn't very smart picking me, but I'm just saying.
Mhm.
Some people then, it looks like there's a healthier relationship than what it really is.
Mhm.
But the vast majority of us, probably 92%-ish, we pick a clone of the person who hurt us the most growing up.
Mhm.
The sins of the fathers
Sure.
will be visited upon the children.
Mhm.
And then it's, to me, somebody says, well, what's the meaning of life? I said, I'll tell you what the meaning of life is. You get what you get. you don't pick your parents. You get dropped down the right parents. It feels like you got dropped in the wrong parents, but they're the right ones.
Mm-hmm.
They so
Right.
wrong, they're right, you know?
Yeah.
And then you have an opportunity. You can be part of the healing, or you can be part of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You can be humble, get in recovery, cry your tears, deal with your addictions, learn how to be accountable,
Yeah.
get all that poison out of your system,
Yes.
eliminate victim mentality. And if your kids then leave home healthier than what you did,
Mm-hmm.
you done good.
Yes.
You
yes.
done good. There should be
Yes.
a ticker tape parade for you.
Yes.
So for me, that's the meaning of life is take the wounds that you got and do as best as you can.
Yeah.
We're down to about 3 minutes. Parting thoughts, parting comments about the show tonight. I know it's been a little choppy. That we've covered this, we've covered
Sure.
that.
Yeah.
A lot of things we haven't covered. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I just think it's a really great conversation to continue because as you're mentioning, just, you know, the question that you would ask when you get to heaven, the thing that I think of is just the allegorical mention of agriculture in the scripture, you know, and I think, you know, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. And so we are cut from the same cloth as the people that reared us. And so because we're that same fruit, we're naturally going to attract what's been poured into us. But what I know is that our Heavenly Father is a healer, and he can restore every wound, every broken place, every bruise, so that we can be the anomaly and find ourselves in relationships that are healthy, that can develop us to wholeness so that we can accomplish the purpose and mission that he put us on this earth to accomplish.
Yes, yes. And there's a point of accountability. The beauty with God is he didn't create robots. It's a free will. And so it's a free will to choose to do the work, to choose to go after your healing and walk that journey, walk that process out. And it's hard to face, you know, some of those demons. It's hard. And it's hard to have some of those conversations with or without some of your family members or whoever has wounded you. But that level of freeing yourself, taking that responsibility and forgiving them, that's the beauty, that you don't have to carry all of those. And then there's a point, like I said, that God is looking at you. I know that, we say the sins of the fathers, but there is a point that he's not looking no more at the sins of the fathers. He's looking at you and your choices and what are you doing? And so there's a time where you have to make that choice. And he didn't create robots. And I think too, a lot of us, we put those expectations on God. That, well, why do you put me in that family, or why'd you do this, or why you do that? Things happen, like you said, with the sins of the father and stuff. But we have to make that choice to willingly unload, find the help that we need, and to give it over to him.
Yeah.
It's hard when we're wounded deeply as a small child. My wounds go back to infancy, and those are the hardest ones when you have attachment wounds. Those show up later in life. But regardless of what it is, I just encourage people, you just keep on working on yourself.
Yeah.
Yep.
And keep on having faith and keep on crying your tears. And you will get healthier. I've experienced that, to where came from a really unhealthy place, and still have a long way to go, but in a much healthier, happier, more solid, more free place than I've ever been.
Yeah.
Long journey to get there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
well, I've enjoyed this.
Yeah. It's been great.
I'm gonna have to get me a white suit so I fit in, because Oh, look.
We didn't plan it. We just
Yeah.
know our color arrangement.
All right.
Mine looks white. It's actually pink.
Y'all just says pink.
Well, I'll wear white. I ain't gonna wear pink.
Pink looks good on men.
Yeah.
Does it really?
Yeah.
Mhm, mhm.
Pink looks good on you.
So the next show, Mark, you're gonna have to wear
He
pink.
said- all right, I'll try, but it has to be a certain shade of pink. I don't know. I look like a big fat pig guy.
Oh,
Well, this has been fun,
Yes.
and I hope it's been helpful to the people out there. We haven't done our live streams for 4, 5, 6 months, so we don't have a huge following. But it'll be recorded. It'll show up on the YouTube channel. There is a way that you could download it, put it on your channel. I can tell you how to do that. But usually there's, by the time it's over with, 4, 5, 6, 700 people that end up watching the show.
Great.
So I hope they enjoyed it, and I enjoed it. Thank you for
Yes.
coming.
Yeah, thanks
and
for having
we'll
us.
do it
Thanks for having
again.
us.
Yeah,
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
I've got to use this thing to turn it off from a distance here. See y'all. Done.